So this is session 3 of our class on keys to successful Christian life. And last week we talked about putting our plan together, and so we've been discussing individually off camera our plans and what direction and how we're going to achieve our plans and goals. So going back to where we left off last week, though, I want to recover staying focused. This might help you with, distractions, because that's one of the most important keys to being able to accomplish your goals, is to be able to stay focused, right?
Right.
Because like she was saying, like Ella was saying, distractions can just absolutely destroy us from achieving the goals that we have and that God has put in our path. And many people struggle with that. And there's so many things out there. And like I said before, sometimes we can see so many things that are important that we think need to be done. And later on in our classes, we'll talk about urgent and important, how to discern and how to divide and how to prioritize those things. But those are the kind of things that can really keep us from accomplishing our goals. So, because, as you all know, if you jump from one thing to another, you're never going to finish anything, are we? And getting discouraged because it's not going fast enough, or because you come up against a wall, like you said, and it's like, what's going on? Why can't I get this? Why isn't this working? Satan will definitely put things in our pathway to steer us off in the wrong direction. So let's look at the focus. How can we learn how to address the distractions and not let them pull us off course? Anybody have ideas of how to, when a distraction comes up and says, oh, you need to come, blah, 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 because this is really important. We really need this. And you're saying, how do you deal with that when distractions come that you really know that's probably not what you're supposed to do, but that guilt comes in there and it's like, well, I hate to say no. Some people can't say no for anything. Mm-hmm. And so you just say yes, and then you have umpteen zillion things that you got to do that you can't get done. So what's the key to dealing with distractions? Anybody have an idea?
I know that in my life, when distractions came, I would, a lot of people want and need all kinds of things, and of course I felt if they called on me, I must be the one.
Yeah.
And it came down to value. It came down to being stolen from.
Exactly.
And when I realized these distractions, even though they seem like good endeavors, were literally put in my path to rob from me.
Exactly.
And I said, well, I'm not going to let that thief enter in.
And sometimes it fits into our ego. Yes. I must be really important that they ask me. I must have special gifts and special talents. And if I don't do it, it won't be done right. You get all those thoughts,
I fed my ego and broke my bank account. Yes. So when I recognized that distractions were a thief, that's when I said, okay, I will address these things. I said, no, I've got to take care of myself. Yep. Or I'd call people who knew me and say, I've set aside this time, don't call me, trying to prevent hurting anybody, or but recognizing that distractions are stealing from me.
Yeah,
was the biggest
thing. Recognizing what's going on is number one. Number two, praying about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go pray about it. Say, okay, God, is this you giving this to me? And see if you have peace about it, or is this just a distraction? So really seeking the Lord until you have peace about whether you should do this or not is the first thing. And number two, have a mentor or someone that you trust that knows your situation and bounce it off of them. Well, what do you think about this? Because I'm really good with my son-in-law bouncing back off him when he says he's doing this, that, and the other. Because he does everything because he thinks anything that needs to be done, he has to do it. And he had a gazillion things on his list he needed to do that day, including doing his schoolwork, grading papers and stuff like that. And he'll stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning grading his paperwork while he's out doing other stuff. that he didn't need to be doing. And I get all over him because this one Saturday, he's decided he needed to go up to church and clip all the hedges. Spent hours clipping the hedges until his equipment broke. And I'm like, and so then he was up till 3 o'clock in the morning grading papers. I'm like, Paige, I don't think just because it needs to be done, you're the one that has to do it. So, so having a mentor or a close friend that you trust that will bounce back off of you and say, well, if you do this, what's going to happen to all this other stuff? How much time is this going to take? So that you can just kind of discuss it and say, is this really something that's urgent that I need to do, or is this just something that makes me feel good? So that's another way. Any other thoughts about how to keep from getting off focus?
I found, because just like she said, you're the one, you're the chosen one to just keep all loved ones or do this or that. And so I found that when I get a lot of calls, or I've gotten a lot of calls over the years, and so you're grounded. I know you're reading your daily word, and then they start telling me what my schedule is, and then they tell me, well, I need you to do this for me. I need you to drive me to a walk. So I need you to do this. I need you to do this. So learning to love on self has been a big one for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Kind of back up a little bit and love on me.
That's right.
The other thing about staying focused is when failures come or difficulties come, that can distract you because just like you're struggling with trying to get rid of stuff so you can move forward. And that can get you off focus because you're like, you just want to give up because it's like nothing's working, nothing's happening. So failures or discouragement can get you off of your focus. So how do we deal with failures and discouragement? What's the key?
You look at the success. In other words, I look to God. He's bigger than my failure. Faith is involved.
Yes, and
get my focus.
The truth is, everybody that's ever been successful has had many failures. You look at Abraham Lincoln; he had like 10 failures before he had a success. So the key to when you have a failure is just say, I don't care that I failed this time. I'm going to get up and keep going. You always have to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I've been reading Rick Joyner's book about leadership and success and stuff like that. And he talks about the most famous and important, and this is in military and battles and stuff like that when they're fighting. And the ones that were successful, the one that didn't give up and run for the tail for the back end of the field. You know what I'm saying? They kept pressing in and pressing in and pressing in, even when things looked like there was no way. It looks like there's no way. They kept pressing in and pressing in, find strategies, trying to find ways to overcome. And he talks extensively about these knights that were fighting the Muslims who were trying to come in and take over Europe, and how there was just a few thousand knights that were fighting against scores, like 20, 30, 40, 10 times the people that they had. And they fought, and it kept looking like they were going to fail, but they kept fighting, and they would eventually win because they refused to give up, and they kept finding strategies, ways to work around the problems and the difficulties. So that's one of the most important things, is don't ever get up. But the second thing too is, if you do have a failure, and like I shared with about my cancer and stuff, if you do have a failure, you have to reevaluate yourself. Say, is this really of God? And if it is, you just have to get up and keep going. If you know it's God, you got to get up and keep going. But if you've really evaluated and you really searched your heart and said, okay, Lord, is this you? I want to know, because I don't want to keep failing and going around this mountain over and over because I'm going the wrong direction. So those are a couple of things that are important to keep you back on focus. And once you're sure that this is the direction you're supposed to be going, and you get back on that focus, and then you keep reminding yourself every day, okay, what is the goal today? What am I going to do? Don't just get discouraged because that day doesn't go great. Well, tomorrow's going to be better, because I'm going to sit down and figure out a way to address this problem that's keeping me from moving forward, And every day keep you reevaluating and finding ways, different ways to address the problem so that you can overcome. I was just looking at poor Abraham Lincoln. He tried to so many. I forget, I don't know my book, but 8 or 10 different times tried to start businesses and run for offices, and he failed and failed and failed and failed. Finally became president. But he didn't quit, did he?
Yeah.
But he obviously knew in his heart that God was directing him. He was a godly man, and he knew in his heart that that's what he was supposed to be doing. So he just kept going and finding people and ways for him to eventually get that success.
I find a lot of people, we have a fear of success sometimes, hidden fear of success, and when they do that, they have little back doors. I'm committed to this. I'm going to try this, but if it doesn't work, I got this going.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, on my focus, if I'm going to do something, there is no back door.
That's right. That's right.
If you plan for a way out, you're not
gonna fail.
planning to succeed. You will take the way out.
That's right.
So focus-wise, that
Yeah.
it helps you keep that vision.
That's right. That's right. And you just have to
Don't
keep
try to
praying.
protect yourself.
Keep praying and
Trusting God.
seeking the Lord and saying and giving it to the Lord, because if God's hand is in it, He's going to
Yep.
show you and provide the way to overcome.
Yeah.
And that's the most important key, is God.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we're trying to do a plan that's, it may be God's will, this direction you're going, but you're doing it the wrong way. And God's saying, no, I want you to do it this way, not this way. He has a specific way of you doing that plan, And so that's another part of it. Okay, God, what am I missing here? What do I need to be doing? Is it lack of faith? Am I walking in fear? Am I depending on my own understanding and not listening to you? Just like the children of Israel, God told them in the Promised Land. He says, well, you march around Jericho 7 times. Now, what's the logic of that?
Right.
Like, yeah, right, God. We're going to walk around Jericho 7 times, and the walls are just going to fall down, right? Because your logic says there's no way, right? And so that's where we have to be praying and listen to God and say, okay, God, I know you have a plan of how this is going to work. Show me how, because He will. He will show us how it's going to work. And I have to do that with my business. I have to say all the time, Lord, how do I do this? How do I get this to work? And it's a lot of faith. It's a lot of faith and a lot of just work, seeking the Lord. So those are the important keys to stay focused and eventually find success in the goals that you're trying to accomplish. Another thing, too, is timing. Timing is really important, I remember Hagen talking a lot about how timing and different things, and he said he would tell his administrator stuff like that. Well, I think we're supposed to do that, and he says the guy would just automatically want to go out and do it right then, and he's saying it's not for right now. This is just like and it'd be maybe 5, 6, 7 years before it actually developed, but it was something God put in his heart, and eventually it was going to develop, And so those are the things that we have to really kind of be patient and wait, and because if it is God's plan, it's eventually going to develop, and He will open the doors. He will open the doors. I mean, we've been planning for a long time to try to have a women's facility, and figuring out how to, transitional housing and stuff, and figuring out how to do it. It hasn't happened yet, but we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel. Starting to get some people that we think will be able to finance it and help us with it. So things are starting to progress finally, but it is a timing issue of when and how and whatnot, and how God's going to do it. I mean, I'm thinking of Moses, and God told Moses He was going to be, deliver the people out of Egypt, and here he is at 40 years old thinking, I'm going to go rescue my people, and ends up on the backside of the desert for 40 years. At 80 years old, finally God says, okay, now it's time to go deliver your people from the Egyptians. So that was a long time,
Yes, it was.
I'm telling you. And for me, I've been wanting to be in some kind of ministry all my life, and here I am at 65, it's taken 40 years for me to get to the place where God intended the goals and the purpose that God intended for me when I was 20. But I didn't know at 20 that I would be where I'm at now. but it took 40 years, to get here. So timing is really an also important key of focus and being sure that you're, moving right in the right direction in the right timing, okay? Okay, the next section is it's about developing self-confidence. I'm going to share a little bit about it, and then we're going to practice it, okay? Because when you're out in the workplace or you're out in society, handling yourself with confidence and assuredness, even though you feel you may be scared to death, like I've had to deal with, VPs and presidents and directors and all kinds of big tough men in the pharmaceutical industry. And if I went in there thinking, oh, poor little me, don't talk to me, don't look at me, they'd be just like kicking me out the door. So I had to develop an outer skin of confidence that I know what I'm doing and I can do it. And I had to assert myself, even though inside I was just a scared little Willie,
I know what you mean.
And so that's another important thing for success, is to learn how to walk in confidence in the Lord and display that confidence regardless of what you feel inside. So what we're going to do now is just we're going to stop the tape and we're going to take a little practice time introducing ourselves to each other and walking in. You're going to pretend like you're going into an interview and you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to practice, being assertive and confident and speak with clarity and with confidence, okay? So let's try that.